the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. Pleased to be hosting this webinar today. Our speakers are Kimberly Keller, Joanna Reed Adams, Wilson Magee, and Ann Heinz Silvis. And I think Joanna is going to do most of the talking, and she's got a Master's of Public Administration and PhD in Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis from the University of Missouri Columbia, and she's been working on leadership development for a long time. Kimberly is Assistant Research Professor at the University of Missouri, Department of Nutrition and Exercise Physiology, and Wilson is a faculty member with the MU School of Health Professions and Public Health Program, and he works on the social determinants of health and community development. And then Ann Heinz Silvis is with the University of Illinois and is the program leader for the community development program. So welcome, team. I'm pleased to have all of you here today, and we'll turn it over.
Great, thank you, Scott, for that nice introduction. This is Joanna Reed Adams. I'm going to begin the conversation today. And we're going to present the slides first and then take questions and comments, but feel free to put those in the chat box as we come to them. And chances are some of your questions will get answered before the end, and then we'll open it up and address your questions then. Changing the slide here. A little bit to summarize this study that we did with thanks to the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. It had to deal with poverty in rural communities. There are a number of those living in poverty in rural areas within the U.S. It's increased from 8 million in 2011 to 8.5 million in 2012. This happened to widen the gap between rural and urban poverty rates, and it gives you some percentage points there during that same period. In 2013, the poverty rate for children under 18 years was 19.9%. For those aged 18 to 64 years was 13.6%. And then the last point there, of 703 high poverty counties with a poverty rate of 20% or higher in the United States during 2007, 11,500 I'm sorry, 2007 and 2011, thanks to my colleagues here, keep me honest, 571 were rural. And those were primarily the counties we focused on, were rural with the exception of the St. Louis area and St. Joseph area in Missouri. There was a need for targeted community development programs in Missouri. It was one of the reasons the curriculum got started in the beginning. Community leadership development, as many of you know, holds promise in creating equitable communities. There's a need for programs for low-income participants to experience because they experience in life more difficulty bridging leadership skills into actually being engaged in the community. Few leadership development programs with low-income community members offer grants such as Step Up to Leadership programs to close the gap. And this occurred with community action agencies mostly, programs that were associated with them. They got the mini grants that we'll talk a little bit more about in detail here. So Step Up to Leadership, there's a little icon there that some of you may recognize that have been involved with the Step Up to Leadership curriculum. It's a 12-week course that's tailored toward low-income residents of neighborhoods and communities. It was created jointly between MU Extension and a collaboration with Missouri Association for Community Action, along with the St. Louis County Community Action Agency, to address the need to get more of their constituents to participate on their boards. The initial goal was to empower participants with the skills that they needed to actively serve on those boards. And a pilot study in 2012 observed an increased self-confidence level and self-worth and recognition that these individuals are valued and have a role in their community. The curriculum consisted of these sessions, and I'm just going to briefly give you a synopsis of what each of these titles of sessions included. Come As You Are was obviously the orientation session and covered what the value of grassroots participation is, helped them understand the importance of fulfilling basic human needs and team building, self-awareness, and empowerment. And then the Planning for Your Passion, which was the second session, it was very important because that provided them an opportunity to identify what they, the participants, felt they were passionate about doing in their community or neighborhoods. So they spent time doing a planning process to help clarify their goals and direct their choices that they made. The next session had to do with understanding and embracing diversity. There were actually two sessions related to that. One was, of course, help create a deeper understanding about what was meant by diversity, and the other one was to demonstrate ways to share life experiences with those that are different from us. And then there were a couple sessions on board legality skills where they learned about how boards work, Robert's Rules of Order, things like that, both the legalities and the practicalities of serving on a board, like how to read a budget, those kinds of things. Then there was a session on Speak Up, Speak Out, where they learned some public speaking skills and some built some capacity in how to speak to elected officials and people in positions of power, etc. And then a session on Funding the Way, which many folks really liked and felt that made a big difference in their lives, was learning about grants, how to write grants, how to look for grants, and that sort of thing to help fund the projects that they came up with in their community and neighborhood. And then Stepping Out was the graduation session where each participant had to give a short presentation or speech about what they learned, what their project was going to be that may or may not have been funded by a mini grant. The study objectives, our study objectives were, as you can see there, to evaluate the impact of the program in a bi-state area. Both Illinois and Missouri were using the program, and to gather information to inform further curriculum development. In other words, to help us update and improve the curriculum. So I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly now for a few slides.
All right, I'm going to start off by talking about the methods. And we used a mixed methods approach in our evaluation. Our participants were recruited by our community partners who facilitated the Step Up to Leadership program locally. So in Missouri, we worked with 6 community action agencies in various parts of the state. Our Illinois participants were recruited via their extension office. And as you see, there was a mixture of urban and rural sites. In the qualitative component, we conducted semi-structured interviews with program graduates, program facilitators, and community members who were knowledgeable about the program and the local efforts of its graduates. Our surveys were done with program graduates and consisted of a retrospective pretest approach. And I'll go ahead and give you a little more detail about who participated. So this is a slide describing our interview participants. It gives a breakdown by gender and total number of the 86 participants we interviewed. And as you can see, most of our interviews were done with program graduates, 55 out of our 86, and the majority of participants, both overall and within each category, were women. So for our survey participants, we did our survey simply with program graduates. And they provided a more detailed snapshot of the demographics of our study participants who were program graduates. And this slide describes includes all the graduates who were interviewed plus 25 who only participated in the survey portion. And as you see, the graduates who participated were primarily middle-aged family members who had long-term residence in their communities. About half of them reported they were engaged in the workforce at the time of the interview. So for analysis, our interviews were conducted with each person individually in a private setting. They were audio recorded and transcribed verbatim. Our team then used in vivo software to develop a coding scheme and apply those codes to the rest of the interview transcripts. And for those of you who have been involved in team qualitative data projects, this was a very energizing point in the project, as we were able to talk among our project team about the different things in each interview that seemed salient to us and the patterns that we were seeing across the data. And our survey responses were analyzed using SPSS analysis software. So our findings we organized into 4 main categories. The first of which would be kind of what you would expect to find out of a successful leadership development program. Because we have such a variety of findings, we won't have a great deal amount of time to devote to in-depth discussion of each of these. But first, I'll talk about how our quantitative findings reinforce what we'd expect to see in terms of the impact of community leadership development programming. And following this, for items 2 through 4, these are things that emerge from our analysis of the interview data and highlight the secondary impacts of the curriculum and its delivery methods. And Joanna and I will both talk about those secondary effects. So for expected finding, this is a sampling of some of the items from our survey. And these findings are consistent with what the literature indicated we should expect. So just to give you an overall sense, participants reported greater self-awareness of themselves, better interpersonal skills, improved knowledge of the resources available in their communities, increased community organizing skills, and perhaps most importantly, they saw themselves as a role model for leadership in their communities. And next, Joanna will talk about findings pertaining to our mini-grant.
Okay, the impact of the mini-grant process, which was tended to be more tied to the programs that were either done by community action agencies or in conjunction with those action agencies and extension. The participants, as we went over in the program explanation, identified their passion in their community or their neighborhood, and then they could apply up to $500 from the community action agency at the end of the course for value-adding community activities. Many of the participants went in together and did joint projects, and so they were able to pool their money that way. Not everyone was allotted the $500. You had to submit a application for that money, so it wasn't a given that you received it. So the projects had to have added value to the lives of people living in poverty in their community. So we really looked at this as, and the folks that we interviewed really looked at it as a small investment with big results in their communities. Such results as opportunity to apply for a mini grant was motivating factor to join the course. So many of the participants joined the course knowing that they had an opportunity to do a project with those funds. Some really felt that they participated for that reason. Graduates have taken the grant writing skills from the program and have applied for other grants in their community. And there's some quotes there from participants saying how the program helped them carry through with their projects. Mini grant as a capacity really helped the participants build social capacity as well as other types of capacity in their communities. But the graduates spent quite a bit of time in our interviews talking about how the mini grants allowed them to address specific needs in their communities, and we'll go over a list of and categories of those projects here shortly. But one particular story was about a farmer's market that community had tried for about 15 years to start, and finally, with the skills learned by a couple of folks in one of the Step Up to Leadership programs, They were able to get the farmers market off the ground, and it is up and running and successful. And there's a quote there from the individuals indicating how tickled they were that it was successful. And something with a lot of impact in a lot of different areas, as we'll see shortly. The mini grant allows a skill set to be put into action. This particular person talked about how the mini grant is really an important aspect of the whole curriculum, because otherwise you get everybody all geared up to do all these things with these new skills and no resources to do it. So there's a skills and connection to resources turn into sustained community engagement for graduates. You really are, they learn these skills and are able to put them into action, which again feeds the momentum that is started. Okay, and here's the kind of the fun part, and what really makes everybody feel good is some of the previously funded projects, and some of these are ongoing projects. Some of them were one time, but some of them continue on through other funding sources and volunteers. And I want to just highlight a couple. You can see we've got them categorized in things related to children, youth, individual, family, hunger, and health. But I wanted to focus on the projects related to hunger. There was community gardens instituted in certain communities, community gardens with handicapped accessible beds, food pantry infrastructure and supplemental food support, and a community food drive. And then related to health, which is a issue near and dear to Wilson's heart, there were countywide wellness fair held, farmers market infrastructure in that one community plus in other places, and personal products and purses for victims of domestic violence was a project that one group did. And you can see there that there are some other really worthy projects, but were all done virtually by volunteers and some seed money from community action agencies. I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly now.
And I'm going to talk about another set of findings that kind of surprised us, that our findings also indicated that the program had a positive impact on graduates' family relationships. And initially this was a bit surprising to our team, but as we thought about it and reflected, our team realized that the curriculum imparts a number of skills that are important to successful interpersonal relationships, whether it's at a professional level, personal level, at any level. So I have a couple of examples to illustrate what we found. For example, there were several participants who reported using techniques or knowledge they gained from participating in Step Up to Leadership to improve their marital relationships. So the woman who was quoted in this slide, for example, was able to identify an impaired communication pattern with her partner. She was able to see some of the factors that may have led to the communication pattern, what role she may have played in it, or her reaction, and how they both can work toward more positive interactions with one another. She felt more empowered in her marriage because of the skills she learned in the program. And the other area, improved household management skills, were the other major area in which curriculum content seemed to improve graduates' family lives. Graduates transferred curriculum content into life skills that helped them to become better organized, more capable of dealing with logistical issues such as juggling schedules, and making and sticking to a household budget. For some graduates, participation in Step Up to Leadership was the first time they had opportunity to learn many of these concepts. So I think this is an important finding for us. And I'll turn it back to Joanna so she can talk about the last section.
Okay, the last section here is on the importance of continued support post-graduation. And as a team, we, after reading many interviews and coding the comments of people in vivo and actually doing some of the interviews ourselves along with our graduate student Laurel Goodman, I have to give her a lot of credit for a lot of hard work. But she's graduated now and gone on to bigger and better things. So, but I wanted to give her credit. Program graduates differed in their capacity to independently exhibit leadership skills. So it was valued by the participants that it was important to have continued support after graduation. And they expressed that as a need. And they also, those who had it valued it, but those who didn't wanted it. So that's something we can carry forward about this program as we revamp it and edit it for future use, is to try to build in more capacity to provide that support post-graduation. Something we learned. A little bit about some of the overall results. How do I connect to opportunities was a question that we asked program graduates. You can see a quote there by one of the Community Action Agency grads. It talks about it depends on what you have going on in the area where you live. If you stay in a dead area and you don't have a lot of participation, or you don't have a lot of things going on, then there will be no opportunities. But for a person who doesn't mind going down to City Hall and telling them, look, we need to do something about this or do something about that, yeah, I think we will find opportunities. So a lot of it had to do with the perception of the graduates. They were empowered to seek opportunities on their own. Much of that was learned, I think, in the Speak Up session of the program. Speak up, speak out. Now for other results, programs need to help complete the bridge. So community leadership programs, especially those dealing with low income, we're making sort of an educated assumption here, is that we need to help complete the bridge. After they've learned these skills, we need to help them find the opportunities to use them and to make an impact in their community. And there's another comment here from one of the program facilitators that that there's not the systemic support that's needed, and that's something that is missing on a community level, that the community should be responsible for and not the individual. So there's an opportunity perhaps for us as community developers to work with communities to help provide those opportunities for those coming out of community leadership development programs. Okay. And the conclusions here that I just want to highlight, and then we have a couple questions for you all to get the conversation going. Step Up to Leadership actually provided opportunities to develop important skills they use to positively impact their communities. These are the participants. Many of these were sustained efforts, and we have lots of stories along those lines that we hope to write a paper about some of those outcomes that are continuing today, as well as something about the program development portion of the program. In addition to intended consequences, Step Up to Leadership had positive, unintended effects on participants' lives, such as the personal and interpersonal relationships that Kimberly mentioned. There are opportunities for sponsoring agencies to play an important role, even after participants graduate from Step Up to Leadership. So in many communities, there is missing that support for low-income residents to kind of spread their wings and participate in impactful manners. So now would be a good time to write any questions or comments that you have in the chat, but as we're you can get an idea of how many are familiar with the program. Of course, Anne and Mary.
People might be looking for how to raise their hand. It's up up toward the top of the screen, right above the bouncing arrow. Just pick something appropriate from the drop-down box there. But while folks are finding that that button, I had a question for you. What would you say? Sounds like the program has some really nice nice impacts, intended and unintended. What are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing out of participants, either in their other lives or when they're trying to implement the principles that are delivered in the program?
Answer that, Wilson.
Okay, I'll try to speak to that. I think one of the challenges we found is the reason that brings some of the participants to the program. Some because they have a stipend and a child care amount they are given. So some because they are coming from low income backgrounds, they just came for the money instead of the content of the program. So in the end, that would also affect what they are able to do after graduation.
So that's a motivation thing. What about the folks that are seriously there for for the content? What are some of the barriers that they encounter?
I think one of the things that was a challenge was probably the fact that the participants had such a wide range of starting points in terms of their own capacity and skills that they brought into the situation. For a number of them, it was a great opportunity to learn job skills. But those who already had some of those kind of job and leadership skills, and they just needed that kind of extra nudge, those were the ones that really blossomed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe to continue the discussion, I think for those who came for the right reasons and completed the program, the main challenge they face is around the mini grant, the financing of their projects. So some had lots of good ideas, but the capital, the seed money was not available.
Any other comments from the group? I see there was a couple that had some experience with Step Up to Leadership before. If while we're waiting for questions or comments, if any of you would like more information on Step Up to Leadership and the research project that the 4 of us worked on, 5 of us worked on, you can put your email address in the chat box and we'll get back with you.
Well, one of the other projects that the center's funding right now is looking at alternative ways of financing things, kind of local finance mechanisms, and I'm starting to see a lot of chatter about that in various circles. And so have you guys looked at, so for those who are motivated and who lack kind of funds, have you looked at some of these newer sort of crowdsourcing mechanisms to help them achieve those goals?
That's a difficult question because I think the challenge is also the fact that the program is a joint program between community action agencies and extension. So we are still in the process of drafting a report that we hope to give back to the community action agencies to start looking into some of those other opportunities for funding.
And I also think that a lot of that crowdsourcing potential would depend a lot on local participants' familiarity and comfort with that process, and having the infrastructure in place to knowledgeably guide them through that process too. So that's a really interesting potential to think about, I think.
Yeah, well, stay tuned for that project that about this time next year. Watch the webinar, I guess.
Absolutely. Sounds exciting.
Yeah. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in from the audience. Do you have a slide kind of with your contact information? Maybe folks can be in touch with you after the fact. I do have a short evaluation. If folks could fill that out, that would be great.
I don't think we have a slide with our contact information on it. We have a slide with our resources that we use and a picture of one of the graduating classes. But I can
We can type in the.
we'll type it in the chat real quick.
That sounds like a great plan. And
Let's put your email. Joanna.
Okay, we'll just put mine, Joanna's, and then I'll be the central spot, and I'll get it to. All right. You want me to put yours in there, Melissa?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, Joanna can be the point person for any questions or further follow-up that you would want to make about our presentation today.
well, thanks very much. It looks like a really nice program, so I hope people do take advantage of the information that's available.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to present and to conduct this project. And
Yes.
And we hope to work with you all further in the future.